Eat today, my iPad, get some sleep last night. Realized that. Oh, you just can't drive on. There is support, yeah.
Although you.
Ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just during the conversation, I'll let it know that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, in that case.
There's a let it pass and then three.
Good. Figure it out. No, figure it out. Figure it out. Whether we're ready or not. What's that? Schools do a lot better off.
We will now call to order the meeting of the Winter City Council, November 6th, 6:30 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please, Tracy?
Councilmember Anderson?
Here.
Councilmember Lauren? Here. Councilmember New?
Here.
Councilmember Cowan?
Here.
And Mayor Biazzi?
Here. Thank you. Let's see. Alan, can you lead us in the pledge of allegiance? please?
Certainly. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
Mayor and Council, there are no changes to the agenda.
Move for approval. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimous. So we had a closed session prior to this to discuss some public employee performance evaluation, and we have no reportable action out of that meeting. Council staff comments, Councilmember Warren?
Hey, on October 18th, I participated with the Rotary Club of Winners in reading to classrooms from grades K through 5. It was a good time. On October 24th, I attended the YOLO Leaders Meeting hosted by West Sac in West Sac, focused on the changing landscape of community engagement. Earlier in that day, I participated in the My Civic platform overview. On October 25th, I attended the Winners Joint Unified School District meeting on their goals and evaluations in the evening at Sherman-Rominger. On October 29th, I met with Don Saylor and later the Hispanic Advisory Committee to talk about school or city issues. October 31st, we had a phone appointment to work on the organization of the rural working group for the League of Cities. And we're working on organization throughout the state. On November 2nd, I helped organize Dia de los Muertos at the cemetery and watched Coco, the movie, at Winners Middle School with the help of Principal Greg Moffett, the Don Levy family, and many other people in town. It was a great time and a really nice event. I noticed the police department was there paying homage to one of their fallen police officers. So it was really nice. On November 3rd, I attended the Concilio Awards in Davis and attended the Salmon Festival in the daytime. And November 5th, met with City Manager John Donlevy to review tonight's agenda, and also met with the Hispanic Advisory Committee to start giving donations to worthy causes. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On Wednesday, October 24th, trail to West Sacramento, the tops, which colleagues were also present. The meeting was held in the Black Box. You can imagine that. The discussion was about engaging, communicating, sustaining the community. On Friday, October 26th, attended the Chamber of Commerce Harvest Festival downtown. Attended the third Salmon Festival, which is on Sunday, November 3rd, in the Community Center. That was a well-attended event. And I see Carol is seen out there. The water agency loves you, Carol. I said you did a great job of organizing that. It's better every year. And today I'm at the city manager in
Thank you. Councilmember New?
Thursday, October 18th, I attended the State Cog meeting in Sacramento. Friday, the 26th of October, I also attended the Harvest Fest. And then Tuesday, the 30th, I went to the YOLO Habitat Conservancy ribbon cutting, which is to celebrate more than a decade of work to finalize the YOLO Habitat Conservancy Plan, Natural Community Conservation Plan, which is a plan to safeguard 13 species of animals and to make it the obtaining a permit for the mitigation, to make it easier, and to also have the permit fees known in advance of application. So that was what that did. It was a very good ceremony, very nice ceremony out in a tremendous wind. Everything blew over, including the podium. But, that was just a sideline. On November 1st, I went to SACOG meeting for the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee. Then on the 3rd, went to Salmon Fest, and also on the evening of the 3rd, went to the FFA fundraiser dinner. And then today, met with the city manager, as most of us hopefully did, voted, and then I'm here.
Thank you. Councilmember Khan?
Yes, thank you. On the 9th, I met with the city manager to review the impact fee study we're going to be reviewing tonight. Also on the 9th, I attended the last car show. And then on the 11th, I attended an EDAC meeting. I was gone for a couple weeks. And on the 3rd, I also attended the Wild West dinner supporting the FFA. And then last night, along with the city manager, I attended the Animal Shelter Task Force meeting, which seems to have a lot of momentum right now. It seems to be going along pretty good. We're actually meeting again next week. I believe it's on the 15th, right? As long as they can make up their mind where, it'll be all right. So anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. On October 23rd, I attended the Planning Commission meeting. On the 24th, I attended the YID Talks, which, as Councilmember Anderson stated, talked about different tools and things we can use for community engagement to get the community involved in some of the things that we have going on here, so it doesn't seem like it's just a few people here making the decisions, that we get input from everybody in town. There was a tool that I think we'll probably use in the future where they had a polling thing online. Everybody had an app on their phone. You just go to this app and they'd ask a question and the responses would show up right on the screen immediately. People would vote for different things. And it was, I think, could be a very useful tool we can use in some of our workshops and things like that. We did something similar at the parking
parking workshop we did. That was really good.
On the 26th of October, I attended the Harvest Festival. I think that was very successful as well. Harvest Festival / Fourth Friday, last one of the year. And this afternoon, I met with the city manager for the agenda review. So thank you all for all your time and effort put into these meetings. And moving on to the next item, we will have public comments. These are for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. I have one sheet that was turned in from Will Pro. And if you would like to come forward, you handed us all, we have a letter here that you gave us, which we haven't had time to look at yet. We'll let you.
I'll be brief and just kind of
Okay.
summarize what's in there. Thanks for taking my comment, first of all. My name is Will Pro, and I'm a local small builder here in Winters. And I just wanted to relate it to council my experience trying to obtain some of the small builder lots that are supposed to be made available in the new developments. And as I'm sure you know, the city general plan requires that 10% of all the lots in new subdivisions over 20 lots or more be made available to smaller local builders. And knowing that, I went into the Stones Throw sales office as soon as they opened and inquired, and was initially met with basically the sales associate said that they had no knowledge of it and didn't have any lots that were going to be marketed or made available. And with the city council member New's assistance, I inquired with the city and found out that according to the developer, they said that they had at some point listed the lots and had no interest, and therefore we're not going to be offering any of the lots for small builders. And upon finding this out, I contacted some of the local real estate professionals who I thought would, have some background in this, all of whom said that they had no idea. They never heard anything about this, hadn't heard that anything was going to be made available, which kind of raises the question of how they were marketed and when. I know that specific development was, I think, greenlighted maybe 12 years ago or something like that, and perhaps there was something done many years ago before there was actually a parcel map or any product that could be marketed. But what I would ask of the city council is that if the developers did do their due diligence and market these lots according to the development agreement, it seems like there should be some more bite to what we have in the development agreement, so that the developers are required to sell these lots to local small builders. I would also hope that we could review the development agreement and see if indeed they did satisfy the requirements, because running an ad for 5 weeks in a weekly periodical seems like it is not giving proper exposure to the market for marketing these things. Everybody that I spoke with had no idea that they'd ever been offered, and these are people who are the most intimately familiar with the Winters real estate market. If it eluded their knowledge, then I don't know how we could expect people to find these lots, buy them, and utilize them. Obviously, these represent a huge amount of money that would be reinvested back into the community, which if that goes away, all that money is going out to larger companies that are not local companies. Being local and using local subs and vendors, I would hope that the city would protect this policy. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Since it's a non-agendized item, we can't really give any feedback or comment on it tonight. It is definitely something we can look into in the future and see if there's some
change better. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public who would like to speak to a non-agenda item? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Mayor and Council, a couple of items. Item A are the minutes from the October 16th regular City Council meeting. Item B is an amendment to the waste management contract to include penalties for customers for either overages or contamination. The contamination fee applies pretty much to green waste, people putting garbage into their green waste containers. And overages are just, I know that Waste Management goes through, they provide warnings to people about this, that this gives Waste Management the ability to assess an additional fee if people either contaminate or if there are overages. Item C is an update from the city's representative on the Sacramento Yellow Mosquito and Vector Control District. Item D is a budget adjustment for some recycling funds. This action tonight is basically bringing money into the city's budget. As we went through, we periodically get a block grant from the Waste Management Board. In this case, we have a number of years that we haven't spent the money. It comes out to about $30,000. And tonight's just a budget adjustment, but as we move forward, some of the items that we can buy with better recycling or trash cans, we can buy picnic tables with it, or benches, bike stands, those types of things. The purchases will come back at a later date for the council to consider. Item E is an agreement for home administrative services. This is, the city went through a federal procurement process where we duly advertised, interviewed. It was a request for qualifications, and staff is recommending the contractor to basically implement and do the paperwork regarding the federal home funds portion of the grant. Item F is a claim against the city for damages to a vehicle. Item G is a recommendation for the approval for a report management software. This is a partnership between the city and the UGA tribe. We're going to split a license. The RMS system, very important. It's an integrated part of our county-wide emergency communication system that integrates with the CAD system. And kudos to Captain Brad Lopez, and also can't say enough for the partnership that we have with the fire chief for the UGA, Gary Frederickson, a really good partner for the city. Item H is a grant deed for a utility easement in relation to the Olive Grove subdivision. Item I is acceptance of an irrevocable offer of dedication in relation to the Callahan Estates Phase 1 work that's been done out there, and the associated subdivision map. And finally, item J is a resolution accepting conveyance of a property in relation to Blue Mountain Terrace Senior Apartments. This is the property where they're essentially conveying over the land for the senior center project. The reason why we're doing this is because as we get ready to submit the next grant application for the construction of the project, the city having possession of the property will be a big gold star when it comes to doing the application. And that's the consent calendar.
Excuse me. Thank you. Any questions? Council, any public comment on it? Seeing none, I will open it up for motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Motion. Second. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? Thank you. One thing that I'll just mention about that is on the waste management contamination piece, so everybody knows that today's garbage trucks are a lot different than our previous ones, as Congress dominated earlier. It's not Ralph Gonzalez out there driving a garbage truck. For those of you from Winters know who Ralph Gonzalez is, who drove it for the city for a long time. But our trucks nowadays have cameras. They see everything that's being dumped in there. So if there's contamination in your particular dumpster, they're gonna see it, they're gonna have it on camera, and you're gonna get a notice about that. If you get a warning first, and after that, they can fine you. So, they have some sophisticated, I guess we don't call it garbage trucks anymore, huh? Refuse, recycling equipment.
Call it smart trash.
Smart, yeah, smart trash. So,
They are now Ralph Gonzalez's
yeah,
trash.
sure, not that, for sure. All right, no presentations tonight. We have discussion items, and the first one is the continued public hearing for the proposed update of the City of Winters 2003 Development Impact Fees Nexus Study.
Good evening, council. Tonight before you, we're asking you to hold a public hearing and receive input from interested parties regarding the 2018 Development Impact Fee Nexus Study and the setting of development impact fee amounts, and adopt Resolution 2018-59 imposing capital improvement facility fees for the general government, fire, parks and rec, public safety, wastewater, water, and transportation improvements. Last year, we engaged Hansford Consulting Services to provide technical expertise in updating our capital projects list and the development impact fee amounts. The goal in updating this list was to determine what fees the city should be collecting in the future to provide funding for projects that would need to be completed as a result of development. The last project's capital projects list was completed in 2003, and the fees were adopted in March of 2003. In 2010, staff reviewed the project list from 2003. We made adjustments to the projects, removing certain items that had been completed through whether we'd issued bonds or through the redevelopment process. We took some water and sewer projects off through the water and sewer bonds. We took the police and fire station stuff off because we'd done that through our redevelopment agency with redevelopment bonds. And we adjusted cost factors because as we were finding in that time period, our bids were coming in lower than our estimates. So we wanted to make sure that we were not overcharging and we weren't charging fees for things that had already been completed using other financing means. Staff worked with Catherine Hansford and her staff. We reviewed the projects remaining on the list from 2003 that maybe had been completed from 2010 to now, because that's another 8 years, and to identify projects that needed to be developed as development moved forward. We looked at impact fees for water, wastewater, streets, general fund, general capital, parks and rec, fire, police, storm drain, and a monitoring fee. As a result of all of the studies and the review of the projects, new impact fee amounts were calculated. The storm impact fee itself was removed completely from the program. With our new development, we're requiring the developers to provide all the storm drain needs for their development. And so there's no need for us to charge that fee anymore. The project costs included all the fees that are allocated to the land uses in the general plan. And as with Ms. Hanford, we added a couple of new land use fees. We have an accessory dwelling unit fee. That's something that's come up several times recently, and it's become a topic of discussion throughout the state. We also added a hotel as a new fee category. The impact fees recommended are for construction costs only for the facilities and equipment that will be needed to provide services for new development. So we have no financing costs in there. These fees are an increase over the 2010 amounts. They are still significantly less than those fees that were collected based on the 2003 study. And those are because we have used the bonding and we have removed projects off of there. We also require developers to construct various projects through the development agreement process to build in their developments, and therefore those projects have also come off of the list. Catherine Hanster is here to talk with you and give you a presentation on the development of the impact fee nexus study. And then once that's done, we would ask that you open and hold a public hearing to hear from the audience. And then we will come back and ask for direction on adopting resolution 2018.
Thank you. Good evening.
What do you think?
Thank you for having me. Thank you. This is Catherine Hansford. I'm the principal with Hansford Economic Consulting. Okay. All right. So just a couple of slides to provide some background on what development impact fees are and why you might be collecting them. So these are fees that are charged to new developments. They are payable at building permit, and they pay the proportion of new facilities costs that are incurred by the city to serve new residents and employees. The fees are based on projections of growth from the general plan, and as those projections have been subsequently updated. The authority for the city to charge development impact fees is the Mitigation Fee Act of 1987. It is very common. You will find cities throughout California have development impact fees. Okay. The purpose of this study, as you've already heard, the last comprehensive update of the Nexus Fee study was conducted in 2003. The Mitigation Fee Act requires demonstration of a reasonable nexus, and as such, the fees need to be periodically reviewed and updated. There have been updates to the land use growth projections and infrastructure costs to 7 development. In addition to that, the fee study also reviews the cost allocation methodology used to establish each of the fees. So that was also revised in some instances. And as you've already heard too, the city did adjust the fees in 2010. There are 5 key components to I'm so sorry. There are 5 key components to a fee study. Essentially, these 5 key components ask, what is the fee for? How is the money going to be used? And demonstrate the reasonable relationship that the fees will only be used for their stated purpose and that new development is not paying beyond its fair share of the impacts. Changes to the city DFID short for development impact fees program included in this next study. You can see the fees are listed here on the left. All of the fees are updated with the exception of storm drain, which have been removed. In the 2018 update, there are changes to the facility needs, the costs, the land uses, and some changes in fee methodology. In addition, the hotel lodging land use was added, and the accessory dwelling units were added as separate land use categories. In addition, for the Parks and Recreation fee, which currently only residential projects pay, the those costs now are also allocated to non-residential uses. And to be very clear, this does not include neighborhood parks, which would be appropriate to only have residential land users pay. These are for community facilities that are of a greater benefit that employees can also take advantage of. The streets fee was updated by Fair and Peers, a separate consulting firm. Therefore, the methodology for that fee is not in the report itself, but it does include the numbers that were developed by them. Some major assumptions of the study. So I already mentioned, the study uses assumptions from the general plan, but as they have also been subsequently updated. The table here shows the current number of residents and employees in the city, and the additional number that are anticipated for development of this study. These numbers were provided by city staff. The total amount is called the service population. That includes 100% of the new residents and 54% of the new employees. That formula is based on the number of hours per week that the city facilities are available to the residents and the employees. Each of these fees have 4 components to them. Each fee may have only 2 or 3, or they may have 4 of these components. The first is called a buy-in facilities cost. For certain facilities, there is existing capacity or use still available to future land users. Therefore, they are allocated a portion of the existing facilities costs. The second is shared new facilities costs. These are costs for new facilities that will be utilized by both existing and future service population. Third is the new development facilities costs. These costs are borne entirely by new development because the existing users will not have any benefit or use of the additional capacity of services provided. And all of them include an administration cost. There are certain costs involved with processing applications, such as staff time, and the 3% figure is a very typical number, etc. that's used for development impact programs. This table shows total development impact fee program costs. And the costs here look higher because the purpose of doing the nexus study is to determine a maximum justifiable fee. So the city has discretion to set fees at any level below that which is determined the maximum level in the nexus study. So as I worked on this study, I included financing costs. This table here reflects the total cost that could be included to develop the maximum justifiable fee. And you can see from these numbers that the category, or the fee category that has the greatest amount of cost is parks and recreation. And that's followed by water, wastewater, and streets and fire. In this table, stripped out the financing costs so that you can just understand the construction costs. And it does include some costs too. So you can see in this table which fees have each of these 3 cost components. And you can see that they're all a little bit different. Water and wastewater, there is no existing capacity in the system. So these are new facilities that will be built. For some of the facilities, a portion will be used by existing customers, but the vast majority of these 2 fee components are for costs for brand new facilities. Public safety and fire, for public safety, different. The facilities have been built and the capacity is available, as new service population comes into the town, they will have the benefit of those facilities, therefore they have buying. So that's those different cost components, and important to note, costs in this table are only new development share. Some of the major costs include 3 new wells for the water system and treatment plant improvements for the wastewater system. For the Parks and Recreation fee category, the major cost is the sports complex and communities. For fire, there are buy-in costs for the 2011 improvement shared space for police and new development facilities, which include a training tower, engines, general facilities, new development cost share includes a corporation yard and remodel for the old police station. Public safety, these are, I just said that, it's a buy into previous. There are 2 main different cost allocation methodologies used. For water and wastewater, the cost allocation is called the dwelling unit equivalent. And that puts all of the costs in proportion to one single family. All of the other fees are based on persons served, which is that formula, 100% new residents and 54%. The 2018 Nexus study, as I've already mentioned, aims to determine what could be the maximum justifiable fee. And for that reason, there were 3 different options that were looked at in the study. The first option included having a financing cost for all facilities and equipment costs. The second option included financing it half the amount, and the third option included no financing costs. It is our staff and recommendation that no financing costs be included. In the prior Nexus study, no financing costs were included. And also in the transportation consultants, so the streets, there are no financing costs. This slide shows a comparison of the fees with each of the different options. You'll see in all of these, and most of these slides going forward, that the medium density unit is used to illustrate the fee numbers. And that's because that is the most common development in the city. So current fees, you can see the change from the current fees under option 3, which is the lowest fee levels. The total change in fees for medium density unit would be just over $382. That compares with the maximum justifiable fee, which would be just over $7,800 change from the current fee. You may notice in this table also that the streets fee does not change between the 3 options, and that is because the transportation consultant did not include any financing costs, so I just left it the same amongst each of the options. In this table, you can see what the changes in for each of the different fee components. And so, really what I want to demonstrate in this table is that certain fee categories of fee increases and certain fee categories of fee decreases. So that overall, the fee level does increase slightly under option 3, but it's really a shift in what the fees are paying for between 2003 and 2018. Notably, the increase in cost for parks and recreation and the decrease in cost for the wastewater system. Also to note, however, that there will be certain costs associated with wastewater in certain parts of the city that are not included in the fee costs. So there are certain areas where there will be additional costs that will be included in the development agreements that are not in the development impact. This next slide shows how the change in the development impact fees might affect project financial feasibility for developers. This is shown for 3 different densities of single-family homes, and this is on using option 1, which is the maximum justifiable level. The purpose of this was if you adopted the maximum justifiable fee, would that impact project financial feasibility? What the figure shows is that there would still be a residual value left, even at the maximum justifiable level. That means that the profit could be made and that it would be viable. The thing that is not readily quantifiable is that in certain parts of the city, I already mentioned there would be possibly additional wastewater costs. There also will be the requirement to construct neighborhood parks and to take care of storm drain infrastructure needs. Those are additional costs then that would be a burden to the developer, which I can't readily illustrate in the figure, but do need to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about the level of fees to adopt. The purpose of setting the fees is to recoup costs, but it's not to stop development. This graph shows a comparison of what the development impact fees are in winter today, what they would be under each of the 3 options, and in neighboring cities, again using the medium density unit. So you can see that currently Winters has the lowest fees in this region, and under each of the 3 different options, Winters remains at the low end of the range. Under option 1, fees would be more similar to would be higher. We wanted to demonstrate to you some fee impact examples of recent applications to the city. We have 4 examples in this presentation. So you can see here that the total increase, this would be under option 3, $383 for this particular permit. And actually the additional 3 examples have the same result.
That was the one out in Winter Ranch.
Parkland.
To summarize, the report shows the 3 different fee levels, but it does also have each of the fee components, the chapter by chapter. It shows the methodology using option 3 for each of those chapters. This table summarizes the fee changes since 2003. So in 2010, the fees did go down. The 2008 fee levels are higher than 2010, but still lower than the 2018 fee levels. So to conclude, the proposed 2018 fees are lower than set in 2003 for all land uses except for the central business district and light residential. And that is due to the change in methodology of cost calculation. The fees are higher than set in 2010 for all land uses except rural residential, again, due to changes in methodology of cost allocation. Some development costs have been shifted out of the DIG program to development agreements. As I mentioned, neighborhood parks, storm drain, and wastewater infrastructure. And to conclude, some considerations for you with this 2018 DIP schedule. A reminder that fees cannot be set any higher than the maximum justifiable fees. Option 3 is consistent with how the program was set in the past, as well as how the streets fee program is calculated by their fees. The program fee level should be set so the development can occur anywhere in the city. So as I showed you, even under the maximum fee levels, there is some profit remaining. However, that profit margin could be taken away in certain parts of the city if you went with option 1 maximum justifiable level. Total development costs will vary throughout the city depending on the particular site. Available to ask questions on the report.
Thank you. Questions from the council before we conduct a public hearing? Yes.
Question. City manager. Fix the language.
Yeah, we've transmitted, I was going to follow that up. On page 21 of the report, it has a description of the sports park. Staff is recommending that we're going to add one word into the third sentence in there that basically says that the planned sports park 30.5-acre site intended to provide a venue for a variety of organized team sports, including 3 to 4 basketball, baseball, softball, diamonds, turf fields for soccer and football, and a multi-use sports barn for lighting. So we will absolutely add the word baseball into that sentence.
His decision.
I had one question. So in this list of fees, we don't have fees in there for there's development in the flood zone area. That's completely separate from this impact.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
That's different. Go ahead.
There will be portions of the city that have additional costs that are specific to those geographies that are not captured in this.
So that's what I was wondering when you said there's certain areas of cities that will have more charges. And I'm thinking, one thing I can think of would be development in the flood zone. Is there another?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there is. The one thing, this impact fee program represents the entire city. As Ms. Hanford has pointed out, though, geographically, you can have special ones. The flood zone is a very good example. Another good example are the properties, which include the PG&E property and the remainder of the Bush properties. We established basically a zone of benefit out there for which we have separate agreements with each one of the property owners. So you can either do it on its own geographically, you can have it in the case of what we did out by the freeway, you can do it with individual property owners. So you can definitely add other fees onto it. Typically, it either has to be by a very broad policy like the flood zone or by separate agreement.
Also, you may have a land use or a proposed project that not quite sure which of these land use categories the particular project falls into. The report does talk about that, and that the city, the finance director and city engineer have discretion to determine which land use category it best fits into. And the city always also has the discretion to determine on a case-by-case basis if it's not really clear.
Chair? Yes. First off, thank you, Catherine. You did a real nice job presenting this. There was a couple of things. First off, I appreciate the breakdown in comparison to recent permits for the houses in town, because I think that is more real for a lot of people than low density, medium density. A lot of people don't even understand what all that means. So thank you for that. It makes it real clear what the exact difference would be on a permit for that specific house. And it's very helpful. On the non-residential stuff, a couple of questions I had there is the central business district, it makes a pretty big jump by $5.11 a foot, and the office space by $10.12 a foot. And do we have any kind of comparison with the other cities, or, because that's a big jump for us, how that compares to other cities for similar item?
Yeah, I didn't have that as part of the study. I focused on residential. That is something that can be done. I did notice that big jump for office, and I'm not entirely sure how between the 2003 and 2010 adjustments, somehow that office number dropped quite a lot.
Yeah, it was 64 cents before, so
Right.
yeah, that's a huge difference, but yeah, and maybe $10 is going rate in other cities, I don't know, but I would sure like to know the answer to that one, how that compares, because I don't want people to think, Winters is the highest place to build an office building. One thing I did understand from John in my meeting about this, prior to this meeting, is that the central business district, that line item, and the office, those fees, those impact fees there do not apply to projects within the existing buildings. Correct? It doesn't apply to tenant improvements and such.
Because
So
that's
that's-
not new development.
Yeah, that's new. And that's something that also I feel needs to be emphasized, so people don't think that they're gonna get hit with this big ticket on tenant improvements and remodels on those existing buildings. I think that's real important. But I would like to know how we compare to other jurisdictions on those two items, since they're the ones that are making the biggest swing.
So although I can't give you a direct answer because I haven't done the current state research, what I could say though is the 2003 numbers, when the fees were adopted at that time, those numbers are all higher
Yeah,
than, with the exception of just lighting this year, they're higher than the 2018 fees. So,
yeah, I know what it's like to pay those fees. When I built my house in this town, I was under that fee.
yeah.
Boy, would I like to have some of that back. That's for sure. Okay. Shelley, do you have any insight on that, on those
Well, part of the,
commercial?
I can't tell you what the comparison would be, but I will tell you that, based on what I read, is a lot of that's gonna be because we've moved some of the costs of the parks into that.
Right.
Because prior to this, there was no parks in any of the non-residential. So they didn't have any obligation under the old fee study. And
Right.
so a lot of, I think you'll find, and I'll go back and dig it, 'cause it's been a few days since I've read this. I think you're gonna find a great deal of that is gonna be the parks portion of
Right.
that fee.
Yeah, and I get that, and I know there isn't anybody sitting up here that doesn't want that sports park, so. That's
So-
something that,
I can do a little more digging on that, and Catherine and I can both get back to you as far as doing the comparison. We can get and get you that information.
I just don't want to price ourselves out of the ballgame for office space and stuff like that.
One reality about the impact fees and the categories have a direct correlation to the amount of space that exists within that category. And one aspect that is really important to note is that we have hardly any office. If you look at the total zoning of the city, the amount of office in that one single category is relegated to, I think, about 5 acres.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's not-
about a 5 acre parcel, but if you do if you could kind of extrapolate out the number of square feet. So, yeah, that fee's gone up, but at the end of the day, and I know that they'll get back with everybody, but I think it's because there's such a paucity in the amount of office space. Sometimes you look at it and go, oh my goodness, that's a very high number. We don't want to, X ourselves out. The vast majority of the rest of the zoning, as it goes throughout the whole city, quite frankly, it's a lot lower because there's more of it. And it's why as we look at the median density comparison to the other cities, it's because that's what we have the most of. So it's the better comparable.
And so I can tell you that of the change for the central business district, we put in $7.29 per box. And we put in $5.83 per square foot on the office, and that's just related to the office. So that's going to be the biggest majority of the change. But I haven't gone through, and I wasn't focused on that. I did see that it went up, and I knew I had looked at it and realized we had parks in there, and so that was part of the adjustment. But I can go through and double check that for you, and then Catherine and I can get back to you as far as comparing it to the other cities around us.
Thank you.
I have a question. So how do we calculate the fees when we're looking at like a mixed use development where we may have office space or business retail space on the first floor and residential on the second floor?
You'd have to determine, so the fee for the non-residential is per building square foot. So if you have 2,000 square feet of office on the bottom floor, so you might split it over 2,000. And then if you have 2 apartment units on the top, they would pay for it.
Okay. Any questions for the public hearing? Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, at this point, 7:25, I will open the public hearing. Any comments on this from the public? Seeing none, close the public hearing. 7:26.
I just have a question, Shelley.
Yes.
So, if there was a change in the Roman 6 standing, would that affect this one?
Potentially, I would say yes, not just.
No, just say absolutely yes.
Yes, it will.
Yes.
It will impact both the development impact fees that we have to charge, but it will also impact what current residents are having to pay. So it's going to be a double-sided monster, because anything that moves forward is going to have to take any new wells, any new development, they're all going to have to be geared towards the proper Chrome 6 mandate. Plus, we've got to deal with everybody that's already getting water through our system. We've got to get that all into the Chrome 6 mandate area. So it's going to be a double-edged sword. We're going to have more money in impact fees from incoming development, but we're also going to be looking at more fees and rates for the people that are doing it, because we've got both sides of the equation to deal with. So yes.
I don't want to talk about that no more.
I had just one comment. It has to do with, I know it has something in there about increasing the fees annually based on construction cost index, which I think is good because according to my conversation with John, we didn't have that in our past.
Actually, we did.
Did we?
But I think because we had lowered the fees, and then it was just one of those things where we were wanting development to move forward.
Yeah.
So we didn't really want to do anything that would impede the developers that were coming forward and trying to get their stuff going. So it was in our prior resolution. It was just something that we hadn't dealt with. We do need to be more consistent moving forward, and we will be more consistent moving forward, because then what that does is similar to our water and sewer rate increases. Have we done a little bit every year over the 5-year time period? We've been looking at such a big jump. And the same thing here, although For most of the development in town, the jump is like less than right at 2% increase. But if we just tick it up a little bit to keep up with basically inflation, because all of those costs are gonna go up for all of those projects. And if we don't get to that project until year 6 or 7 of this plan, you know, the stuff we do maybe earlier in the project will be closer to what our projections are. But it takes us 4, 5, 6 years to get all the money in and get it out the door. Then we'll see an escalation in the cost. So I think for us, we need to make sure that moving forward, that we do stick with that and bring it forward to you. We bring it forward to you every year. If you don't want to raise them, just let us know. But I think staff needs to get that on their calendar and have that something that comes forward to you every June 30th or in the month of June so that we can move forward in July with the new rates.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's important to have in there so that we see, you know, we're seeing increased costs on everything we build anymore. And
Exactly.
at least we have that option to have that, to increase that, and we can come back if something, the market crashes and the development stops. We
Kind of
can
like we did
choose
in
not
2010.
to increase it.
Or we could adjust them down to what we did in 2010. I mean, in 2010, 2008, 2009, 2010, we were seeing our bids come in at 30 to 40% less than engineering estimates for a lot of that work. People needed the work, so they wanted to keep their people busy, so they weren't coming in with as high of costs on their contracts. And that's what we did in 2010, was we wanted to be able to reap some of the benefit and maybe help people keep moving their projects forward because we brought those fees down to reflect the new bid climate. Well, we're in a totally different bidding climate now. And so that was part of why we needed to put this in place.
The other comment I had was about the different options, 1, 2, and 3. And I think it's pretty clear, to me anyway, that option 1, even option 2, I don't think we want to go out and borrow a bunch of money to build these facilities as much as we all want them now. We'd love to have that new sports park built, but going out and borrowing that money and betting on chance that the development's going to occur or what's projected and the money's going to come in to pay for all those payments, and when we borrow that money, and if that doesn't happen, we're stuck trying to figure out how to repay those somehow, so.
And we have really, as the city, have not depended on financing to do our infrastructure in the past. We did use some financing for water and sewer, but we did that very strategically because what we used those bonds to do was to get us so that we could get some of the development out by the freeway. So that we didn't have water service all the way out to PG&E and to where the AMPM and stuff like that is. We didn't have the sewer lines all the way out there. So what we did was we put that money in place and we went out and worked on getting those developments to come in, but we had to have infrastructure in place to do that. So those were very strategic decisions on what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it so that we could get our economic engine. And so, but as a rule, just like the stoplight out at Main and Grant, that was all done with impact fees. And we used all of our impact fees to do that, but we didn't go out and get the money ahead of time and do it, and then have to hope somebody's gonna come and build some houses that require that stoplight to go. What we have done is we've gone out and looked for grants and other funding opportunities that aren't costly to us. Grants, they cost us a little in staff time and effort and dealing with all the bureaucracies, but it doesn't cost us in real dollars as far as paying an interest rate on those monies. And so that's what staff has been really good at working on, is going out and getting those grants to move things like the roundabout forward and things like that. So, staff is not recommending that we do option 1 or option 2. We are recommending option 3.
The biggest jump that we really stands out is the one for the Parks and Recreation. Actually, we had an affordable housing steering committee meeting, and they provided a table with the current fees and the proposed fees for the senior apartment complex out there. And when I saw it, as well as other people on that committee saw the jump in how much they were gonna be paying, increasing for the parks. It's like, what? Are you serious? It's gonna go up that much? But, it's two very high costly projects, the sports complex and.
And I think everybody will benefit.
Yeah.
When we get those in place and we have those facilities, I think the city will really enjoy having both of these facilities. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So staff is recommending that you adopt resolution 2017 or 2018-59, lost my place. Yes, 2018-59. And we are recommending that the effective date be January 1st, 2019, because it's a nice, clean cutoff for, and if there's people that have maybe some development that they'd like to get started, maybe just look at some of our friends moving a little bit faster, because some of them could save a little bit of money on it. That maybe, they've all been warned, they've all been talked to, that the fee has been being done. And I noticed, when healthcare came in and we pulled their permits, and they've been told, we're redoing the impact fee study. And so I'm going to tell you what the impact fees are now, but I can't guarantee you what they're going to be later. And we would be wise. So we've been telling people this is coming, and I think everybody knows it. For the most part, it's a very normal street.
Yeah, I agree. When you add them all up and you look at the comparison, on that, the example he gave of, $383 increase over 2010. It's, I think, fair enough to consider all the different impacts that we added on the community.
So will we be adding language that this will be looked at annually and as?
It is in the resolution.
I didn't.
Yeah. I have to find it.
It's a pretty hefty document.
Yeah. Okay, section 6. On page 93 of your agenda, each fee imposed by this resolution shall be adjusted automatically on July 1st of each year beginning July 1st, 2019, by a percentage equal to the rise in engineer's news record cost index for the preceding 12 months.
But that's per our review.
Yes, staff would never increase any fee without coming to you ahead of time. So even though it says automatically, automatically basically means staff automatically brings that to you every year for approval.
So if we can get a developer who wants to come in to build us a new sports park, we can reduce that fee, correct? We always have the option of reducing.
We always have the option of reducing fees. You would have to make a finding for doing that, but just like we reduced the fees in 2010, you have the option, but realize that in an impact fee area, you have to have a finding for why you're going to do that. You can't just come in and say, I just want to do that. You have to have a finding that this developer's come in and donated the land or done this or done that or done something else that impacts the cost of the project, and therefore you can lower the fees for people moving forward. You can't just, because then if you just automatically want to reduce something, it kind of, you gotta, the nexus is what's important. So this is why we're charging this, and if you change why we're charging it, then you can change what you're charging.
And it could also be challenged. 2010 is the best example. We went in, we pulled projects out that we completed, and there was no challenge to it, basically because we could go back and we said we pulled the public safety facility out, we pulled some water wells out, we pulled out some wastewater improvements. Because at the end of the day, the Nexus report, the methodology that Hansford is used in this is important and it's meaningful because tonight, obviously a public hearing, it's a legal process. Everything has to correlate back to the enabling legislation which allows us to do this in the first place. And the one thing that, as Shelley said, you can't be arbitrary.
But if you
You
got a
think, well,
developer come in and give you $10 million, here's $10 million, now all of a sudden, the rest of that park only costs $12 million. And that $12 million spread over the rest of the development is much less than $22 million spread over. That would be a finding that you could make, if you could find somebody to come give us $10 million.
Start looking.
So, but that's kind of how you would be able to justify it.
Thank you. Other comments?
So where do we stand on finding out about what I asked about with the office and the other? If we go ahead and approve this
Mhm.
the way it is, because
If we approve it the way it is, and we come back with you and we find something that's out of line that you don't like, and you don't want to keep, then we can always amend the resolution and amend the fee schedule. And we can do it as soon as the next meeting if that's what's necessary to do that. Because you are setting the fees. And so if we come back and we show that we're double what everybody else is, and you don't want it to be that, then you can direct us to, we would probably have to come back at the next meeting, report into what we've given you. You would give us direction to come back with you with a different fee schedule for those two items. So it might take 2 meetings to get them done.
okay,
Yeah, I just, I went through and as best I could, I added up what Vacaville says, and there's a $6.55. So, but the comparable that's really difficult to do is, Vacaville probably has hundreds of thousands of square feet to allocate it over versus us, which would probably have 20,000.
but I also don't want to be an impediment to try to get somebody to build an office building.
So Catherine and I will get on
Because we got a
that.
couple ideas on that.
Catherine and I will get on that tomorrow. And hopefully, by Thursday? By Thursday, we'll be able to get back with the city manager and get something out to all of you.
Well, I will say that I'm real pleased with how this came out, because it always scares me when somebody talks about, looking at impact fees, because I always fear the worst. I've seen them go up so much a couple times in the past, not necessarily here, but in other jurisdictions. And where it's been a big deal to do exactly what you said about running down and turning in your plans before the first of the year, because it would save you huge amounts of money.
Right.
And to see with the average track house that's being built out here, only a 300 and change, difference is about as minor as it can be, considering. So I'm very pleased to see that and, see how it was juggled to make that happen and still give extra money to the places where we all want to see some extra funds go. So.
Well, and kudos has to go to some of the engineering staff and other staff within the city where
Right.
they have gone out and gotten grants and allowed us to remove some of those
Sure.
projects from the list. Because by removing those, it obviously cut down on the amount of money that we had to allocate out. So by staff and engineers and everybody going out and looking for all of this money that could come our way, whether it's from State Cog, whether it's from Caltrans, whether it's from some other kind of grant, working with the developers to get things laid out the way they need to be, that's really helped us be able to keep those costs down because we're still getting projects done and it's not costing us as much money to get it done. And it's not costing the developers as much either.
Thank you, good job.
Yeah, I know, I don't think any of us like to see fees go up, but from what I've seen through the study, to me, it looks like it's justifiable. Fees increases. And I think a good job doing the study. Any other comments, questions? No, open it up for a motion.
I'll move approval of resolution 2018-59.
Motion on a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the circulation master plan update.
Good evening, Alan Mitchell, your city engineer. We'll be quick. 1992, as part of the general plan update, the circulation master plan was prepared by William Smith Associates. The plan provided a recommended circulation plan, including projects with cost estimates, road classifications, and standards. Subsequently, the city's traffic engineering consultant, Fair and Pierce, provided a new traffic demand model in 2002. And since then, they've been updating that and analyzing projects as they move forward. All these development projects, PG&E, Chevron, Winners Ranch, all of those have been analyzed independently. So what we want to do is come forward with a comprehensive master plan and look at the citywide. The impetus for this was the updated impact fees, which you just discussed. So that was approved by council to go back and update the master plan. So we engaged Fair and Pierce to do so, and we went to the planning commission on October 23rd, and they recommended that you approve it. So we've got Greg with Fair and Pierce here to do a quick presentation, and then we'll take questions after that. But basically tonight we're looking for you to approve the master plan and the road impact fee program.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Greg Barron with Fair and Pierce. As Alan mentioned, we've been working on the circulation master plan update for the last year or two, and here tonight to provide a brief summary of that plan update, as well as the inputs into the roadway impact fee program that Ms. Hanford just summarized for us. So I have a quick presentation here. So as Alan mentioned, the purpose of the plan update is to identify the future roadway needs for growth throughout the city out through 2036. It's been 26 years since a comprehensive transportation plan was developed for the city, so it's long overdue. Since then, there have been a number of individual studies and plans that have been done for various development projects and corridors all throughout the city. The recommendations from those efforts, some have been implemented, things like the roundabouts or the roundabout on Grant Avenue, other changes to the roadway system. So the idea here is that we're going to consolidate all those recommendations into one single document moving forward. Another element of this update was to review the city's roadway level service policy, which I'll talk about in the next slide, and finally update the city's roadway impact fee program. So first of all, level service policy, for those of you who are familiar with this concept, roadway level service is a qualitative measurement of the overall operations of a roadway system. And what it does is it measures delay to motorists on this range from level service A, which is the best, to F, which is the worst. A generally represents free flow conditions, as if you're the only person on the roadway. Level service F is congested conditions. And this is usually used to determine the roadway facility needs throughout a given study area. So things like the number of lanes, traffic control devices at intersections, so on and so forth. Industry practice states that the boundary between level service E and level service F is actually the optimal level for roadway operations during peak hours. The current level service policy for the city is a level service C policy, and that's maintaining level service C conditions or better during peak hour conditions. What this means is that the network is not going to be fully utilized during peak hour, and other hours of the day off peak will operate well below the available capacity on your circulation system. One of the trade-offs with level service C policy or something similar to this is that it requires a larger roadway footprint. You need more roads, you need more lanes, more intersection controls. All those things cost a lot of money to build and maintain. So it can end up being a really costly endeavor to try to maintain that kind of policy. So staff was interested in reviewing this policy and coming up with a recommendation for something that was a little more lenient when it comes to delay. And so in the master plan update, we're recommending level service policy to maintain level service D or better during peak hour conditions. What this says is the city is willing to tolerate slightly higher levels of delay, nothing near overly congested conditions, for the benefit of having a roadway system that's less costly to operate, build, and maintain. So one of the benefits of updating the circulation master plan is that we got to assess the performance of the existing transportation system. What you see here is a map of the circulation system. Grant and Railroad obviously are the main arterials bisecting the city, serving motorists as they enter and leave winters. You also have a series of collectors that serve neighborhoods that are off of those main thoroughfares. And then a number of intersection traffic control devices, all concentrated around the Grant Avenue corridor. A number of these you'll see that have been constructed within the last year. You have a couple of signals that they've rounded out. So a lot of changes that actually been made to the circulation system fairly recently. Now, in terms of level of service, this map here shows that the system is operating with relatively little delay throughout the entirety of the system. The colors there represent level of service, C, D, and F conditions. The yellow and green represents a level of service D or better. If you were to see anything that were a level of service E or F, which would exceed this new level of service policy, that would show up as either orange or red. So you can see there's nothing like that today based on our analysis. This map here represents PM peak hour conditions, which is typically the worst case for any given day. Another advantage to updating the master plan is that we got to update the city's travel demand model. This is used to evaluate individual project impacts and to forecast traffic volumes well out into the future. The horizon year for this particular model update was 2036, which is consistent with what SACOG typically uses for their forecasting for regional transportation system changes. As you can see here, the population up to 2036 would double, and you'd see some substantial growth in all the different land uses, both residential and non-residential. And one of the things that city staff wanted to do is make sure we were setting a high ceiling for growth in the future so that we wouldn't understate the accompanying traffic volume growth and the necessary transportation system changes we have to accommodate that growth. Now, in terms of the future roadway network, what you see here is kind of the general framework of what would be necessary to accommodate that traffic growth in the future. Grant and Railroad continue to serve as the main thoroughfares in and out of town. What we see is an expansion of the roadway network up to the north area as that development occurs. One of the defining characteristics of the circulation system is the completion of the Main Street loop all throughout the city, as well as the construction of several new north-south and east-west connectors to provide service to those new residential neighborhoods in the north area. Now, in terms of level of service, you still see a lot of yellow and green here out in the future. That's despite some pretty substantial growth in traffic volumes throughout the city. So generally, the system would be operating well. But what you do see is some new red, orange dots and lines there that represent level service E or F conditions, mostly concentrated in the eastern end of town, close to the Interstate 505 interchange with Grant Avenue. When you think about this as the primary entry and exit point to town, and you're funneling that much traffic through the roadway at limited capacity, you start to see some additional delay and congestion. So in order to accommodate that delay,
Can you go back for a second?
Sure.
That slide? So where you show that red color on Green Avenue there, is that with a 2-lane or a 4-lane?
That's a good question. So that's a 2-lane segment. Are you talking about between west of East Main there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's for a 2-lane cross section. One thing to note here too, when we're doing this type of analysis, we're reporting level of service both for a roadway segment and then at an intersection. When you imagine yourself driving around town, where you experience delay the most is at intersections. So typically anywhere you see an overlap between the intersection and a roadway segment on this map, the intersection supersedes the roadway segment delay that's being reported. So we came up with a set of future roadway improvements that would be necessary to address some of those deficiencies in the operating system. Most of those include the build out of the roadway network in the north area, as well as several new traffic control devices at intersections, mostly around Grant Avenue. You can see there are a couple of new traffic signals there, 2 new roundabouts, and then the last improvement that's included here is the widening of Grant Avenue from 2 to 4 lanes between East Main Street and Interstate 505.
And that's for the complete streets.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, a lot of this was kind of pulling together all those various documents. You'll see that a lot of the improvements in here mirror what was included in that Grant Avenue Complete Street study.
Yeah, great, go back.
Sure.
Kind of as the mayor pointed out, so this is a future roadway operations, and they show the deficiencies, the orange and the red up there. And then as you switch to the next slide, where the improvements go in, you see the roundabouts, you see the widening to 4 lanes, and you see the traffic signal that goes in at Main. And that's where you get to the better level of service and everything. Because the previous slide was locked in on the 2 lanes. This slide shows just the addition of roundabout and light. So that's the way that we're kind of playing this, and that's why the improvements are designed the way.
Yeah, that's a good comment to make. And the idea is that as people are, especially during the afternoon peak hours, people are arriving back into town at the end of a work day. They get off at the interchange, and then a number of them want to continue west down Grant. But based on all this new residential growth in the north area, a lot of them will want to dive off of Grant and head north to those new neighborhoods. So we basically need to increase the capacity in that part of town. Whereas further to the west, there just won't be a lot of demand in the future despite some of that growth. All right, so as far as the P program goes, there were 4 specific improvements that made their way into the program itself. Those include 2 signals on Grant, one at the intersection with East Main and the other at the intersection with the southbound ramps at I-505. Another is a new roundabout at Grant and Morgan. And then the last one is the widening of Grant from 2 to 4 lanes east of East Main Street. So those are the purple improvements that you see in this map. The other set of improvements, everything in orange, those are also included in that build-out roadway network that I just showed in the last slide, with the assumption is that developers would bear the full burden of those improvements. Those would serve those folks directly. So those are really in that citywide basket of improvements, like the purple improvements are. So we prepared planning level cost estimates for each of those 4 improvements. You can see them here. They total just over $8 million. For a lot of these improvements, we're able to base these cost estimates off of similar recent projects within the city. So these are all within the ballpark of actual bids that you've seen within the last year or so. These include the construction, design, administrative expenses related to each of the projects. And then the last step in this process was to allocate those costs across all the new growth throughout the city. And that's based on the anticipated use of these facilities by every land use category. When you think about a single family home compared to an apartment complex, those have different demands for the roadway system, just because the number of occupants and the number of trips they generate. And so this allocation that you see on the slide in front of you is responsive to those nuances in the way that people travel. So you can see the existing fee from 2010, depending on the category, either goes up or down, but there aren't really many substantive changes from category to category. I will note that for both the office and hotel categories, those weren't included in the 2010 fee program, so those are new categories for the 2018 update. Yeah, all those were then fed into the impact study that Stanford just presented earlier. So that's it for the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Questions? I have a couple comments, and I brought it up to the city manager. I think I brought it up to Alan before we presented at the planning commission meeting. Is that second roundabout there at Dutton Street? I don't see that ever happening. It's too close to the one that we just put in. I mean, there's hardly any distance in there. And I kind of feel the same way about that traffic light that you have shown me that has that southbound off ramp off of 505. It's like it's so close to the next light. How, I mean, I know that was in our complete streets program, but I don't see how those things are feasible. If those aren't in, how does that impact this?
If those aren't in?
Yeah.
Well, for the the second roundabout at Dutton, that's definitely viewed as a long-term improvement. It's not necessary to accommodate majority of the growth that's expected to occur out to 2036. So I think there are other adjustments you can make to the circulation system to get by without that for quite some time. The signal, the interchange is more important, I think, because of the increase in travel leaving and entering the city. So I think you would see some pretty substantial delay if that weren't included in the P program. And the proximity to the next signalized intersection there, I think that can be addressed as long as the signals are coordinated with each other so that you don't have a situation where one's given green time and then you run to a red light next adjacent intersection. Those types of details can be worked out through various signal timing strategies. Yeah, so I think the signal, the key improvement, the roundabout is one that's certainly
Yeah, I think that roundabout at Dutton Street, there's something that we have to look at some long-term planning. That whole area, be just somehow shifting that whole street over, closing it off, whatever, or something for future discussion and along my out, I believe.
Yeah. The Dutton roundabout was included as part of the overall plan. One of the key aspects was the idea that we wouldn't have, Christmas tree traffic signals going all the way up Grant Avenue. And the desire to keep as much of Grant Avenue as 2 lanes versus 4 lanes, because if you want to get rid of the roundabouts, it's really easy to go to 4 lanes and have a huge boulevard. So that Denton roundabout came in as part of one of the Caltrans requirements.
Yeah, there are other advantages to it too. For bicycle and pedestrian safety, having the roundabouts along that corridor help with crossing, especially Grant Avenue with the traffic volumes that are anticipated in the future. So I think there are other motives aside from operations that those are determined to be desirable from the complete street study.
And my other comment was, I don't like the recommendation for going to level service D from where we're at now at C, which means level D. We're going to have more delay going through certain areas. Having that as a policy, I read that. I don't like the sound of that slowing. There's people already complaining about how long it takes to get through there. And we're recommending a policy that would make it even worse as well occurs. We could tolerate more. And I don't know. That part was my biggest concern, was changing that from level services. But, your explanation of how that, if we go with C or better, we have to have more roadway, wider cross more, that type of thing. I mean, really, the biggest place that affects is going to be there on Grand Avenue, right?
Yeah.
Not the railroad.
Yeah, if you were to maintain the level service C policy, you'd probably see at least a couple of new signals that would have to be constructed along the way just to adhere to that. So I think you could see the cost of the fee program double if you were to go that route instead. Yeah, so that's just one of the trade-offs again.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the level service D is probably much more practical in the future. So you just keep costing more than I think in California.
Yeah. I think I read that we have currently kind of go right about level service D on Grand Avenue. Some reason at peak times.
Yeah, it's already existing conditions.
I just had a question. I assume that there wasn't a concern about, or a thought about putting a roundabout at Grant and Railroad because of space, or are there other reasons?
Yeah, the footprint for that roundabout would be fairly large. You'd likely need to have other bypass lanes or some kind of hybrid configuration, which would really balloon the size of that facility. Yeah, so there, for that reason, also just the character of that intersection and surrounding land uses, the signal was there for option.
We actually have a study with the drawing of what that would look like.
It'd probably be ugly.
Yeah, I would post it if I didn't think that I would get this troll about it. we had the master roundabout guy of the world, Dan Burton, who came in and did the study here, and we're in the process of installing the traffic signal, and he's going, okay, we can take this traffic signal out and we can put a big roundabout in here. I'll dig that out. Yeah.
For those of us here that have been around long enough, we can remember when that intersection was stop signs only. And we went to the flashing red light and the actual stoplight. Seeing a roundabout there, it's like, never. So the other question I meant to bring up earlier when we talked about impact fees, you're looking at population, you're talking about maximum of 14,400. So maybe you can address this, John, even though our general plan says we're at 12,500, but these studies we're doing, we're going out even farther than that.
Yeah, and it's very simple. The 12,500 number was basically a calculation. It was an estimate of things based, realize that at any given time, as you want to estimate populations, it's based on a multitude of different things. Economics, which take in mortality and birth rates and those types of things. But also, when it comes to land use, it's based on densities. And I'm all teed up for this question because I was asked the exact same thing. So realize that SACOG is always adjusting their numbers based on economics and what happens. The 12,500 number is not a cap. It was the densities when the city's general plan were put together were calculated based on an estimate of that. But what have changed as far as densities go? The best example is the second unit requirement. And the state legislature adopted a requirement that says, if everybody wants to put in a granny flat, they can. So if you calculate those going on properties that it wasn't, well, instantly your densities, your numbers go up. That Greg pointed out that the numbers that they use spin off of some of the economic estimates for SACOG. They're the regional planning body, and the metric that they use is always moving. It can go up, it can go down. We see it. Population density per unit, population of children. It used to be 0.72, now it's 0.52. Go back up to 0.82 as far as the numbers go. So it's always moving. These estimates are based on best economic data that we have at any one time.
Yes. Yeah.
So, first I wanted to ask you about an app that people use coming into town called Waze, or whatever other apps people use. How is there any consideration of how those apps are impacting our traffic, our levels?
That's a really interesting question, and one that we've been hearing a lot lately. It is so unpredictable, but the effect of that is felt very strongly by everybody. And that's happening in a lot of jurisdictions we work in. So it's not something that we typically model unless there's a very specific, maybe repetitive condition that we can analyze. So these numbers that you see here represent what are considered as kind of typical weekday conditions. So we have to do additional analysis to see what kind of facilities or controls we need to accommodate that extra traffic on Friday afternoons or whatever it's going to be when you do see increased volumes because of those apps. But yes, certainly something that can be dug into and quantified.
Just in a broader sense, do you think that any cities are looking at the impacts of that kind of app or software?
Yeah, usually, talking with other jurisdictions, they're looking for interventions to try to deter that type of movement. So, Waze or Google Maps or whatever it is, they have this algorithm that calculates the shortest path from point to point B. And so the one lever that the city has to pull is to slow down that path. And of course, the consequences that slows it down for everybody, including your residents and employees who live and work in town. So it's hard. It's such a nebulous thing, and there are always kind of unintended consequences. So it's a really difficult decision-making process. But there have been some jurisdictions that talked about adding in stop signs just to reduce speeds and travel times along certain corridors that seem to be popular on ways.
I've heard from other rural areas that they're very impacted by waves.
Yeah.
They have no way to calculate it or respond.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. Yeah, some jurisdictions have taken to enforcement. Typically, people from out of town who are driving through on local roadways aren't as familiar with, just the way of driving about those areas. And so there are usually some enforcement levers that can be pulled as well to deter people from driving through or they're slowing down traffic. So yeah, it's still kind of an emerging problem that's trying to be addressed.
And then my other question was, many of us get off the freeway at Pew Creek Road and come through town at Railroad. And would there be any mitigating or any consideration of a higher traffic volume coming in through that side of town?
Yeah, so the analysis accounted for some growth along that corridor, I think less than what we expected along Grant. And based on those forecasts, there wasn't anything that would exceed that level service threshold. So the study doesn't reflect any kind of changes along that corridor. Not to say there aren't modifications you can make along the way to improve those conditions, but there wasn't really a systemic need to do so.
The only other thing that I just wanted to mention, statistics that I saw on your counts is that seeing that 23,000 daily on 505, I figure out how to get more of those people to block 505 and get them in here.
Yeah, I think if I go back to the land use growth map, the highway commercial growth might help with that. Some just the additional attractions in the terms of yeah. Thank you.
Is there any comments from the public out there? Anyone speak to this? So.
Someone wants us to add a couple more roundabouts. He's dialed again. He knows how to do that.
All right. So we need a motion.
I move that we approve the circulation master plan update sent by Brown Press and the staff and approve the master plan.
That's with option number 3, right?
With option level number 3.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. We pass unanimously. Okay. Moving on to the next item, which is the waste management rate increase. No.
Small item.
Very popular.
Very different, or you can probably recommend. So we're asking you to hold a public hearing on the proposed rate increase for waste management regarding the landfill rate increase. And approve the resolution 1862 adopting these new rates. As you know, we had a new agreement we signed on waste management last June. The agreement allows us to adjust rates as needed for services. We did normally our CPI is kind of the one thing we look at, but we've had a recent increase from tipping fees from Yellow County. They just sent us a notice recently raising their per ton for trash from $45.20 to $50.48 per ton, and then their per ton for mixed green waste went from 54 to 62. So those are costs that waste management obviously incurs hauling their stuff to the landfill. So they're needing to kind of recoup those expenses. The landfill had to do some new construction to add a module because they needed to get in sync with their waste discharge permit. So those new rates reflect the cost for adding those new modules. The rate increase is going to be about $1 per month for our residents, and there's tonnage is going higher. And they would be effective November 7th, approved by council. Kayla's here to answer any other questions you might have. We We did a public hearing notice, didn't receive any comments from the public on the small increase. So, good question.
Yeah, I have a question on what kind of outreach we're doing to educate the public about their ability to choose maybe smaller trash cans down. Those people that aren't, maybe they're one or two people in a household, they don't need the larger cans. Like, are we doing outreach so that we can maybe lower the costs of waste for seniors? Or,
Well, we initially rolled the program out. We kind of tried to encourage that. The default was 64 gallon, but we've always been making sure of saying we can size down if we have to. So, I don't know if anything more recently.
Not recently, but when we first rolled out the contract last year, we created brand new residential brochures that were sent out to every resident. And it does list what the sizes that we have available, as well as on the local website. They can look at the rates and the various sizes there. I'm actually meeting with Carol tomorrow to discuss outreach for next year, so that is something that we can discuss tomorrow and prepare for and send off in the beginning of next year.
I think it's really important.
Yeah, it's important for residents to know what options they have. I completely agree.
Anything else? So, that's pretty quick. All right.
Okay, how about that?
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
go ahead and open up the public hearing at 8:14. Any comments from the public on our waste management fees? None, we'll close the public hearing at 8:14. Yeah, I think it's, to me, I agree with Councilmember Warren that we could do some outreach. Was my comment that was made when I talked to John this afternoon was, a lot of people have these containers that they don't fill them up every week, and there's a can roll empty space in there. If people are concerned, why go without their bill, they can possibly downsize that container and utilize it better, but make sure we don't overfill it, because then you'll be charged a fee, which we discussed earlier. Don't contaminate it. So.
Don't get the smaller can and then contaminate your recycle.
Don't get a smaller can and overfill it.
Charged,
It'll
yeah.
cost you more. Other comments or discussion, I'll open it up for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 2018-62 adopting refuse service rates increases as stated.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, since we're talking about impact fees and rates and all these good things tonight, let's talk about some fines. Up next is Chief of Police on, we talk about the downtown parking master plan parking fine update.
Cherry on top, right?
Yes.
So, good evening, Mayor, council members, city manager, and members of the
Bring it home.
I'm here to present for your consideration tonight an ordinance with companion resolution to update our parking. The council adopted the downtown master parking plan several weeks ago, and part of that called for enforcement in the downtown area. I have to readily admit that parking enforcement was not a priority for the Winter Police Department, and did not garner my attention at this point in time. And what they did found that our municipal code, as well as our fine schedule, which was based upon municipal code, based upon the court's bail schedule, which is erroneous, is in need of an update. The last time our ordinance was updated, as well as the fine schedule, was about 1995. So about time. First and foremost is the ordinance, and that's to amend Winters Municipal Code in regards to parking. Assembly Bill 408 went into effect on January 1st of 1993. And basically it revised and recast procedures, making infractions for parking violations a civil penalty. It also made it the priority, or sorry, the transfer of the processing of the parking offenses to the issuing agency, which would be the Winter Police Department. And as I mentioned before, said that the Department of Infraction fines were removed from the Superior Court Uniform Bail Penalty Schedule. The municipal code refers to even the municipal superior courts bail schedule, and municipal courts have not existed since the 1990s. So staff is recommending updating the Winters Municipal Code to reflect current law and establishing the fines for violating parking statutes by council resolution as outlined in California Vehicle Code. Additionally, asking the council to reconsider part of the municipal code, which makes it the council's prerogative to appoint hearing officers for administrative review. Before according to the Vehicle Code, we're now under a timeline in order to have this administrative review. So I'm asking the council to empower the chief of police to appoint hearing officers as necessary. They can be civilian, they can also be staff. So it just depends on the need. Also amending the municipal code to basically remove what's referred to as the Winters Parking Administrative Adjudication Process Manual, which was drafted beginning in 1995. It is no longer relevant given the current vehicle code, and it's also reflected in our policy manual, how to go about handling parking administrative reviews according to the California Vehicle Code. The resolution, the companion resolution, is just to update the fine schedule. Staff reviewed the parking fine schedules for our neighboring cities of Woodland, Davis, Vacaville, and Dixon, and basically said what we felt was a reasonable, kind of on the lower level, because the direction that I picked up from the council and the parking commission was that revenue is not the priority; it's to move traffic. So that's what we're really targeting. Should be noted that about $11 from every citation is given to the courts in the county pursuant to the government code. So our current schedule right now is about $15. So given staff time and materials, we're literally paying out of our pocket for any parking citations right now. Generally speaking, what we felt was we recommended fine for the vast majority of our municipal code violations as well as the vehicle code violations reference parking is about $30. The exceptions would be disabled parking spaces, which we're recommending to be set at $336, and abandoning vehicles on public highways, which we're recommending to be set at about $100. Yeah. Any questions?
On the disabled parking part of it, was there no fee in there before at all? Because it was supposed to be.
Yes, it was set according to the Superior Court bail schedule previously, which again no longer exists.
Questions? This was something that was definitely discussed at the parking committee meetings.
Yeah.
Getting this, having a fee schedule in there, but also doing some enforcement on it. You know, it doesn't matter if we have a fee schedule or not, if we don't enforce it. It's definitely a priority.
And we currently don't even have a parking citation, so that'll be developed once the council adopts this, so the council adopts this.
To me, the fees look reasonable to me, even though we're maybe increasing them on most items, now everything, but they're pretty reasonable.
Like the consistency.
Yeah, in line with I mean, half the price of Dixon, more than Davis, and more than Woodland. So it's reasonable. Lower than all of our neighbors. Any other comments? Not, I will open it up for a motion.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? That's unanimous. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. And now just a heads up also, we just found out, I'll come back to council with a resolution for delinquent citations. It will be actually a fee, statutory fee schedule. It used to be a fine, basically to refuse or fail to pay the citation, but now we transfer to a fee. So just a heads up, more to come as we sort this thing out. Well, thank you.
Yeah. We'll go to the city manager's report.
Mayor and Council, just really quick, next week we have scheduled to do one of our first strategic planning workshops on the 14th, and we'll be getting an agenda and really getting some publicity. It'll be held at the public safety facility, and I think we decided that we'd start at 6 o'clock on those nights, so we'll get some publicity out, agenda, and all that fun stuff. So other than that, just lots of things going on, and apologize for putting all the fees and increases on one agenda, but it's kind of tearing off the end.
Well, there's salmon in the creek that have been spotted the last few days. They're here.
What was spotted there?
Salmon.
Salmon, hey.
They're not a lot, but they're coming through.
And on that note, I have one more thing which I failed to mention earlier. There's a notice on, called Save the Banks. It's a meeting that's being put on for the Dry Creek landowners. All the people along the property that backs up to Dry Creek along I think. It's on November 18th from 6 to 7 at the Public Safety Building. City of Winters and Peter Creek Councilor mounting a campaign with willing landowners to control exotic vegetation, especially invasive weeds that are easily combustible and pose an extreme fire danger. Let's keep Dry Creek healthy and safe. So we don't have any more fires like we had recently out there. Questions? Call Peter Creek Council. That I will close the meeting on fees, rates, and fines at 8:25.
Oh my goodness. Spit it out. I know what I want to say. Spit it out.
I just want to know.
Well, I didn't know that Will was coming tonight, and I didn't.
They're out.
Good, because he, you know.
They're out.
You know, I'm Melissa Moreno.
I'm good. Good, how are you?
Yeah,
Your hair looks cute. No, yeah.
Am I looking at county election?
I totally really not.
you can't. We're running on our side too.
Yeah.
Huh?
This is
great.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to know.
This is long enough, it's gonna be a different color.
That's probably super
Yeah,
great.
I just decided to let it.
60-40 right now.
Yeah.
My hairdresser, but you know,
I
just
don't
let it
think
grow
it's
out.
on
It'll look like
I've invested in her rates.
Yeah,
yeah.
You know,
Well,
yeah.
But it's a
Except for
little,
my little brother.
You endorsed her as well, right?
yeah, I,
And
she
it's
said,
out my
Of course
mom.
she sees it.
And he
the
goes,
thing is that she came to
you're
Winners.
getting awful gray up there.
Part
I
of-
looked
Yeah,
at him.
well, like, reaching out to this
He
community.
goes,
I'm just gonna.
he says, that was hard. You started it.
So to me, that's,
I'm not the one that started that. You guys
you're here, you're helping the kids. So anything else, what else? Tell me what you know.
Yeah, but I, feeling so old now, you gotta just give it up.
Prop 6,
Are you?
Prop 6.
That's why you got me, you know, so
I'm actually running back to the office. I have to-
Yeah, right there.
Dodge that. What are you looking at? 'Cause I don't see.
Like limiting.
Thank you.
Specified.
One of them had.
All right, I'm not ready.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to.
Yeah, so there's a.
Yeah.
It's early.
My brother.
Wait, Cecilia has 77%.
I
knew she would.
Boom.
Boom, I jumped on that one.
Yeah, well, he's taller than me, and we were
I get
walking
excited.
across from the barn to the house, and she was
I
looking
probably
down.
get wigs.
I told him that's okay.
Our,
Yeah.
our handwriting.
The weight's up.
Me uses my
Just
glasses,
lost
he
it.
doesn't have it.
Here's a link to the,
Oh,
Okay.
if you go,
60/40.
I don't know what happened to my voice tonight.
if you go to our site, we have
It's like
links.
I'm up
to
there and
the-
all of a sudden it's like,
Directory.
yeah.
It
And that might be because the voice is back up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
Okay,
I'm
I'm
kind of
just trying to
embarrassed,
change
so I
this.
could just wait till we were done so I could get on there.
Oh, wait a second.
Wait, I got her now.
Let's go. We'll see you guys later.
Looks like, one's gonna go.
The ones that were turned in before, the early mail-ins, those are counted, but the
30
ones
minutes.
that they get like tomorrow and the next day,
Oh,
they don't release those numbers for what, like 3 weeks.
No person shall stop in the park vehicle on any street or by resolution for a period of time longer than 30 minutes. I have no idea why. Put in there, what special circumstances.
Yeah. Well, I wish I didn't spend so much time trying to make sure I got elected. Super excited about it. Like I got enough to do.
Hey, you're retired, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I got enough to do, trust me.
You're spending all that time painting your toenails.
Yeah,
You gotta get that.
I don't want to see
We still
those.
go for
Hey,
2:30.
I forgot next Thursday was. our
Tomorrow,
first meeting of-
Fireworks,
Stuff that we agreed to.
and we're gonna try and,
Of course, I'll be there, but I didn't.
yeah, you're down for, I decided to do by phone.
I'll just
Because
cancel
if
it.
you're gonna be someplace, either A, you're
Hopefully I have nothing on the
gonna be on your
calendar.
phone.
You know, my husband
or
reminded me, I still forgot.
We'll
He's like, you know, you have
cancel.
something on the
Work on
16th, right?
Grand Gulf Street, which is trying to knock out.
Okay, well, yeah, no, we'll do it on your phone. I don't
I
know if
thought
I got
today was
maybe
gonna be
like
way more painful than it was.
I did too.
I thought people were gonna
Yeah,
yell
I
at
feel
us.
like a court case is the most
Yeah.
ridiculous court case I've had in my career.
Yeah, I kept playing a monologue to myself, I wish
Yeah,
I
I know.
could.
We got twisted.
That's not possible.
I wanna charge them all. Get on and all.
I had at least a dozen subpoenas on this case. For the most
Yeah, I
part.
mean,
So
it's okay, I
11
get
hours,
those
he files
tickets in Davis.
a mental competency to
And the
stand
tickets
trial.
at UC Davis are
Good
super.
demo.
They gouge those
So
students.
we're
in the
now
park.
3 years in pending. And it's just,
Yeah.
you just show the video and submit a jury.
They wanna make their
Pretty
moms
much.
pay for
They
it.
don't want them to
Pretty
drive
good.
at all.
Yeah.
That's what they want.
Yeah, he just keeps on- I guess he's waiting for.
Yeah, they ride your bike.
Legislature
Yeah.
to legalize domestic violence dealers.
I don't know if I should.
That's down the pipe. Remember, rape's not a violent crime and, stealing stuff is okay.
So do you want me to call it 10:30 or?
Yeah, no, I'll get it tomorrow. I'll figure it out. I'll send it a text. Yes.
Just need, on my end, just time, so I can coordinate with CHP and so on.
Okay.
And, yeah, I think that's about it.
Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, I got with Art. The one
Bye.
that I don't have is, Steve from JNM, so.
Okay. He's kind of a critical piece of it, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's not on the phone, the three of us don't need to be on the phone.
Okay. All right, good night.
All right, good night. Bye.
All right.
I really thought that was gonna be much worse tonight than it was. I was dreading it.
Carol sent a note to everybody in town, telling them to come out.
Yeah.
But, the impact fee stuff, I think is pretty basic. As I added it up, the Vacaville is about $6.50 on their office. It's tough to compare, in those ones. But
I didn't even know, it's the first time that we voted on it since Bill and I have been on council. Impact fees,
yes,
man, that's important stuff.
Yeah.
It's an area that I feel like I was deficient in, and I've been in conversations with other people in the League of Cities, talked about like that portion, and I didn't know anything about it. But now, I definitely wanna look at it every year, or every 2 years.
yeah, we'll probably bring it down, but,
How much did it cost to do that study?
about $60,000.
Oh, I wanna do that study every year.
Yeah. It's a big deal. It's
Only
why,
if there's huge changes in the economy, like if it crashes next year, like I think we should lower fees. I mean, if that would be obvious to us though, we don't need a study for that.
yeah, and we would see the construction cost index, I mean, where all that stuff goes. But yeah, cities drop all their fees based on the idea that they really want to spur development to get anything going. And, that's what we did in 2010. We were just begging for anybody to come in and do anything.
It took them 8 years, and here they are.
Yeah,
Michael will be just the one guy with a hammer inside of the building. I think there's 2 guys in there.
it's the 3 hardest working guys that you'll ever meet.
That's why it's covered, so you don't see where the 2 people are.
I think those 2 people alternate here and at the Chevron. They're out there.
Well, yeah, because they have to share a single nail gun.
That must be,
It must be.
that must be why that tarp's up too.
No lie. Gene went out there.
Out by the freeway?
Gene went out there. And the running joke with Shelley and Gene and everybody, Shelley was driving through and she goes, listen, those guys, they only have 1 nail gun. And she saw them sharing a nail gun and she goes, at my house, we each have our nail gun. She goes, what the hell? These guys only have 1 nail gun. Well, Gene went out there on some type of inspection, came back, he was laughing. He goes, you're not gonna believe this. Their nail gun broke. and
So you stopped working that day.
he goes, I went out there and there's this new nail gun in the box. Look, we're good. They finally got the nail gun fixed.
Oh my God.
Oh, cute.
I told Eric, I go, hey, you need to go out and load them one of our nail guns. But probably,
There's 2, let's look for 2.
they probably only have 1 hose for the nail gun.
Right? Oh my God.
All right.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good evening. What's left of it?
Yeah, thanks.
Go home and watch returns.
Yeah. Well,
Nah.
Good night.
I'll wait till-
Yeah, I know.
really want to listen to women.
Good night.